Morning, everyone. Today is the 26th day of Iyar. This is the auspicious day known as Yesod Sheba Yesod, the foundation of foundation in the counting of the Omer. And there are a lot of important days of passing on today. Let's just get straight to our Torah reading. So we're in the fourth reading of Parashat Bemidbar. And I want to look at the very beginning of the reading. We're talking about Numbers chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. And it reads like this: These are the offspring of Aaron and Moses on the day God spoke to Moses at Mount Sinai. And these are the names of the children of Aaron, the firstborn, Nadav and Avihu, Elazar and Itamar. So what is going on here? We're going to hear about the pedigree of Aaron and Moshe, apparently. But immediately the Torah only describes, and it never describes anything else, only the children of Aaron. So what's going on? Why did it tell us we're going to tell you about the offspring of both Aaron and Moshe? Rashi explains that Moses' offspring are not listed. Why is he mentioned then? Why did the Torah mention him in the opening verse? Because in the Talmud, in Sanhedrin 19b, we find that Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says in the name of Rabbi Yonatan, he who teaches his fellow son Torah, the Torah refers to him as if he himself had given birth to this child. In other words, if I teach someone else's child, it's as if I gave birth to that child, if I teach them Torah. Aaron gave birth, and Moses taught them, so says the Talmud. Therefore they are attributed to Moses. Now, there's a lot of discussion about why would you call someone who only teaches, or the Rebbe, why would you call them the father of this particular child? This is not one possible explanation is that in Hebrew, when we say that somebody is the father of someone else, we don't necessarily mean that he's the genetic biological father, but rather that he's the father of that subject. In other words, that he taught that particular subject to the entire world, and anybody who studies it is considered to be a student of that originator of the subject. But that's not exactly what the Talmud is saying. The Talmud is saying that I don't have to originate the subject. I don't have to invent a new area of knowledge. The very fact that I am teaching my fellow son Torah makes me as if I'm his father. Now, this is actually, we're at a very auspicious time to talk about this, because Yesod of Yesod means foundation of foundation. The foundation in Kabbalah is a procreative organ. So we are talking especially about a special day today that is related to people who have not had the merit yet of having children, whether it be because they are single or even because they are married and they don't have children. And many people say that there's no greater pain in life than being married and having an empty home, not having children. It's one of the most difficult pains that a person has. And unfortunately, many times it's even worse than that, people may have children, have had children, and some of them may have passed away. And I've heard from many professional psychologists and psychiatrists that is usually considered to be the greatest pain that a person can have in life, to have had a child and to have lost him. There's a very important story about this from the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov once traveled to a couple who was known to be great benefactors of education. They themselves had no children, but it was known that they were giving a tremendous amount of their money to Jewish education. When the Baal Shem Tov traveled to them, it was long before they started giving. They had been childless for quite a number of years, and they didn't know what to do with themselves. And the Baal Shem Tov traveled to them, and again, they didn't know about this idea yet that they could give to education. And he asked them to close their eyes, and he took them to an island. And on that island, they spent some time there. And there were many, many children there. And when they asked the children, what are your names? So all the boys said the name of the husband in this couple that was childless. And all the girls were named after the woman in this childless couple. And they were dumbfounded by this. They couldn't understand how could there be something like this. An island with hundreds of children, and they all share the same name. They all have their names. The Baal Shem Tov took them out of this vision and brought them back to this world. And he told them, what you saw are your children. Since in the heavens it's been decreed that you will not have your own children, how can this be? Because I tell you now that the way for you to beget many children is to provide for their education. Sometimes a person can teach himself, and then he has many of his own students who are like his children. But sometimes a person is not a rabbi himself. He's not someone who can give the education itself. But what the Baal Shem Tov taught them was that by supporting the education of children who can't afford their own education, or that the parents do not yet provide them with a Jewish education, it's as if they themselves are the ones who had these children. I said that this is a very important and very auspicious time to talk about this, because it's directly related to something that's become a very well-known custom in the Jewish world, that on the eve of Rosh Chodesh Sivan, Sivan is the month in which we receive the Torah, people say what's called the prayer of the Shlah. Shlah was the Shnei Luchot HaBrit, Rabbi Isaiah Horowitz from Prague, and he was a contemporary of the Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria, who was at the time in Tzfat, and he also wrote his own development of Kabbalah, and many Jews for many generations were considered Shlah Yidden, they were called, meaning people that followed his customs, and he was something of a Rebbe to many thousands of people throughout the generations. And he composed a prayer, or copied it, it's not so clear from his wording, he may have copied it from a much earlier source. He composed a prayer that people now pray on the eve of Rosh Chodesh Sivan, because he says, my heart tells me that this is the most auspicious time to recite this prayer, although you can recite it any time, and this prayer is dedicated to the success of our children. I want to read a few lines from it just to get an idea. You are Hashem our God before you created the world, and you are Hashem our God after you created the world. Forever and ever you are God. You created your world so that your divinity would be revealed through your divine Torah. As our sages said, Bereshit, in the beginning, for the Torah and for Israel. For they are your people and your inheritance, and so on. Therefore, Hashem, King of kings, I will come to you and will beg you, my eyes raised to you, to have compassion and hear my prayer, and bestow on my sons and daughters, that they shall too be fruitful and multiply, they, their children, and their children's children, until the end of all generations, so that they and I and we all should engage in the study of your holy Torah, to learn and to teach, to guard, to do, and to fulfill all the words of study of Torah with love. And it goes on, and it's a very important prayer. It's become very important over the past few generations. And many people recite it on the eve of Rosh Chodesh Sivan, which this year is this Motzei Shabbat, this Saturday night. So people will recite it usually, I guess, on Shabbos itself, or if somebody doesn't want to do it on Shabbos itself, then they will recite it on Friday before this Shabbat. The idea of why does he say that this prayer is especially for the eve of Rosh Chodesh Sivan? So one answer is that I've heard, because indeed Rosh Chodesh Sivan is the month in which we receive the Torah. So we're praying for the children. We're praying in that sense for the children as the guarantors of our receiving the Torah. It says that when we stood before Mount Sinai, God said, I'm giving you something very, very precious. How do I know that you're going to give it back to me? What does it mean, give it back to me? That you will learn it, that you will do something with it. So the Jewish people said, we'll give our children as our guarantors. In other words, that they too will learn and they will return it to you. And if not, as it were, then you will take them. There was something of a very strong and powerful commitment to learning Torah that the Medrash says that the Jewish people gave at that time. So that's one option. But I think that especially like in this year, when we read, like in our reading, the fourth reading, this principle that the one who teaches his friend's son, Torah, it's as if he begat him, as if he gave birth to him himself. It tells us that there's a very strong connection this week, especially this Shabbat, between the Torah and the teaching of Torah to children and ourselves, and that we learn this from today's reading, this incredible thing. How does one do this? So there's always Jewish institutions that always need more, they're especially in the United States. But I want to tell you that there's also very sad situations in which one of the parents, sometimes even both of the parents, pass away before the children have finished their schooling. And to be able to help a family like that, especially when there's one parent, or sometimes when there's no parents at all, it's a tremendous, tremendous mitzvah. And it's a way to actually ensure that we have more children than our own, that we are able to have named after us, at least in the heavens, these special children who certainly have God's eye on them. And I've seen it myself in a number of very close cases that where other people would be unsuccessful, these children become tremendously successful, and it's a very good investment in a child like that. So I wish everyone that we have a very happy Rosh Chodesh Sivan on Sunday, and that we prepare properly for it. And also, whoever wants to recite the Shlah's prayer, and I'll send a link. I'll include a link at the bottom of this of the comments.